Angel fans, are the Halos a lot closer to actually being good, or are we doing what typical Angel fans do before the season starts? We're getting built up just to be let down. Today, we're discussing the reasons to be optimistic about your Halos and pessimistic about your Halos, and how John and I are going to approach this season. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you want to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It really is one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And today's episode's brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can make every moment more with FanDuel, and new customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. How about that? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started.
Happy Monday to you, and thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, we've been fans of this team for a real long time, and we're headed into our third season here at Locked On Angels. Couple show notes. This will be the last week of 3 episodes per week because, Mike, we'll be back to 5 days a week starting next Monday, a week from today. So we're looking forward to that. Second, thank you to everybody who voted for Locked On Angels in the best baseball podcast category for the Sports Podcast Awards. As soon as we get the results, as soon as we hear from them, we'll share that with you, but thank you to everybody who voted for us. On today's show, are the Angels closer to actually being good than we might think? Or are we just doing that hopeful Angel thing that we do every year before the season starts? Well, we're going to discuss the reasons to be optimistic, pessimistic, and how Mike and I personally would approach this season. Mike, one thing I love is the number of comments we get on each episode, especially on YouTube. Yeah. And lots of great conversations happening there. So if you haven't done that before, head on over to YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. If you're listening on a podcast platform, you can come on over to YouTube and get in on the conversation. But Mike, we have some great everydayers who leave thoughtful remarks, thoughtful questions. Yep. And this one from Mark Bachner, 7733. Mark is a frequent commenter. He left a comment last week before the Matt Moore signing. And this is what he had to say. I'm of the opinion that the Angels are actually a lot closer to being good than people are acknowledging. I don't think this team needs to sign a bunch of veterans that will block young players. Let the kids play, I feel, should be the overarching philosophy. Sign Michael Lorenzen and Matt Moore, bring them both back home, and give our new coaching staff the talent they need to succeed just by getting average performances out of the veterans and continuing to develop the youngsters. Invest significantly in more trainers, a massage therapist, an acupuncturist, whatever it takes to address the ongoing problems of the Angels getting wiped out by injury. And just like that, they're a playoff team. So that's Mark Bachner, one of our commenters on YouTube. That's his thoughts approaching the season. Mike, does this sound like a reasonable take, or is it filled with a lot of Los Angeles Angels hopium there?
I think that there is some hopium in this, but Johnny, if we break down what he talked about, I think what we can do is take the good, take the bad, and then give our thoughts. So let's start with the good, and let me take the first statement he made. He said, he believes the Angels are a lot closer to being good than people are acknowledging. So what would make them good? And I think one of the things that makes the Angels good is their bullpen. Their bullpen is greatly improved with the moves that they've made, and there's another year under the belt for guys like Estevez as a closer and Soriano late in innings when he comes in to help this team. So you have Estevez returning. You have a Matt Moore who's been very solid 2 years in a row now out of the bullpen. Again, Soriano is great. And then Ben Joyce is somebody that is a bit of a wild card because he could start in AAA, but they could also give him a shot at the major league level. And I think because this team is still kind of figuring things out and there isn't this pressure of got to win for Ohtani and got to win this way and got to win that way, I think you give Ben Joyce an opportunity to prove himself in this bullpen. And then, Johnny, here's where I think there's a major difference in this bullpen. The Angels replaced Aaron Loop with Luis Garcia and Ryan Tepera with Robert Stevenson. Now, you've pointed out that WAR for a bullpen piece is difficult to achieve because the way that they're used doesn't necessarily give them an opportunity to get credit for how they impacted the game.
It's hard
right?
to accumulate WAR as a reliever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So keeping that in mind, I am going to use WAR here, John, but keeping that in mind, here's what's so interesting about the moves that the Angels have made with Garcia and Stevenson coming in and Loop and Tepera leaving. Loop had a negative 0.6 WAR last year, and Tepera had a negative 0.7 WAR. Garcia last year had a positive 0.1 WAR, and Stevenson had a 1.1 WAR. So that's an improvement, John, of almost 2, nearly 3 points in WAR. And again, WAR is difficult to achieve as a bullpen piece, but I think that just that small nugget of information helps us to see that this team is greatly improved in the bullpen. I know it's a risk. I get that Tepera and Loop are going to be guys that we were really going to rely upon, and they were going to help this team. I get that having Garcia and Stevenson repeating what they've done in the years past is fingers crossed. We hope that they're going to do that. I think what we're going to talk about next is going to help benefit that. But John, just simply with this move, I think that the Angels improved their bullpen. And let's not forget also that Aaron Loop and Ryan Tepera were good for a time. And I think Joe Maddon overused them and exhausted them, and maybe they lost their confidence. And that's one of the reasons why they fell apart. But I think that this move, these two particular moves, improves this bullpen greatly. And then bringing back Matt Moore as well, I think that's huge. So, Johnny, how should Angel fans view this bullpen?
To me, it's hard to assess a bullpen based on their previous track record and the WAR that they've accumulated, especially like in the last year. Because, Mike, we say this all the time, even with good arms, it's a roll of the dice for a bullpen. Now, I guess I would say that this bullpen from day one is better off than it was on day one coming into 2023.
Sure.
I hear you on the point about Joe Maddon and overuse and everything, but coming into 2023, Loop and Tepera had a fresh start. And
you're right.
And so any cobwebs they had from 22 should have been shaken off at that point. And Tepera just came out of the gate. What was he DFA'd by May? What was it? It was not very long stay for Tepera. So I think on day one, I think this bullpen is better than the bullpen from a year ago on day one. Having said that, looking at WAR and what people have achieved in the past, you don't know if that's going to translate into the next year. But it is helpful to know that there was an improvement based on just this previous last season, which is like really the only season that you can go off is what somebody did last year, right? And fortunately for us, somebody like Matt Moore, he's got a 2-year track record. So that's fantastic. Stevenson could go either way. He could either remember all of the positive changes he made, or it could all fall out of the back of his head, or the coaching staff might be like, you know what, Steven, we love that cutter, but why don't you throw a knuckleball? You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the other factor here that I think that is important, Mike, is talking about this coaching staff. The number one complaint last year has been the lack of a smart coaching staff. The Angels changed the entire staff this offseason, starting with Ron Washington as manager. He is somebody who brings respect to the managerial job, somebody who's done it before, and players seem to want to play for him, which is something I don't think we've had since Socha. He also brings a commitment to boring, fundamental baseball, which is what the Halos have lacked. They can't run, they can't steal bases, they can't bunt, like do the boring stuff, get base hits when it matters instead of trying to hit the home run all the time. Wash understands how to lead by listening, and he's shared that he spent time with a lot of the players, especially the veterans like Rendon and Trout, to get an idea of what's gone on the last few years. But in addition to Ron Washington, the Halos hired Barry Enright as the pitching coach. We've been impressed with what he's had to say in terms of how he's going to approach the season and how to handle pitchers like Reed Detmers. And already he's worked with Detmers on helping him adjust his windup and push all of his momentum toward the plate to help with the walk issue. Johnny Washington, the new hitting coach, he's not a fan of like a one-size-fits-all approach, which is kind of what we had last year with Marcus Timms. It was, hey, everybody attack the zone early and try to hit that ball hard and hit a home run, right? And they never adjusted based on the count. They, whether it was a pitcher's count or a hitter's count, or there was a runner on third, just seemed like it was the same approach the whole time. And the best thing about that is I think that he's going to find what benefits each hitter and have them focus on that while hitting. So, Mike, how much better is this team because of the coaching staff? What do you think?
I think that they're a 10 to 12 win team plus with this coaching
that's
staff.
significant. Okay.
I think that they find themselves that would put them, if it basically it's the same team, right? And with some of these moves, that would put them at 83 wins instead of 73 wins where they landed last year. And so I could see this coaching staff adding an additional 10 wins just by simply making good decisions,
like raising the floor.
Absolutely. Identifying all of those things. And I really see it specifically with the pitching staff. I think that the pitching staff needed a guy like Barry Enright. And I think Barry Enright's going to bring a philosophy that's going to benefit this pitching staff. And remember, Enright, this is his first opportunity to be a pitching coach, right? And so I think this is an opportunity for him to really prove himself. And what better markings to put on a resume than to say that you improved the Angels pitching staff?
That's
right.
Fair.
I mean, I think that that's going to be a great motivator. It would be for me, John. If I'm Barry, I'm coming in and I'm looking at every detail on how to help this team improve on the pitching side. And I'm working on that from day one when I show up. And I love that he's already been in contact with these pitchers. And I think that benefits this team. I know 10 wins sounds pretty dramatic, but I'm going to lean in the dramatics. I think that this team could find themselves at 500 or maybe a couple of games over at around 82 to 83 wins based upon just this coaching staff and what they bring defensively and the metrics that they bring and the strategy they bring, the philosophy they bring, but also their approach that they're going to go out there and they're going to work through those boring fundamentals. And it was Wash that said, if they're not pulling their weight, then they're out. And that's I love huge. That there's accountability, and there hasn't been accountability on this team for years. And so that alone, I think, improves this team mightily.
Absolutely. I think raising the floor because of the coaching staff, because you're going to focus on the fundamentals. You're going to focus on base running. You're going to use guys with speed like Mickey Moniak or Joe Adell to steal some bags, right? And all of that is to add up to something that's better than what they were. And even Bo Porter saying like base running is a important part of the game because you need to make the other team play faster than they want to. Yeah. And so there's like a psychological aspect there that I think has been missing from this team as well. Predictability is what he said gets you in trouble. If you're predictable, then you're not going to win games. And hopefully the Angels can bring a little bit of unpredictability to the table next season. Hey, we want to thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen every single day. We're just getting started here on Locked On Angels. Coming up, we'll look at the second statement from Mark about not signing veterans and letting the kids play and see if that approach will allow the Angels to get to the playoffs. So we did have some optimism. It's time for a little pessimism, Mike.
Yes.
And so we'll get into all of that coming right up.
Everydayers, I want to tell you about Factor meals. Factor makes meal prepping so simple. Factor's ready-to-eat meals. They're deliverable. It takes the stress out of meal prepping for you and meal planning for you. You can skip the grocery lines, the prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, you get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. And with over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, Calorie Smart, vegan, plus veggie, and more, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to always eat healthy. No frantic lunch preps and rushed dinners. Nobody wants that, right? Factor's 2-minute meals are your secret weapon this year. You can fill up fast with restaurant quality meals delivered right to your door. Plus, Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, and more to keep you going no matter what the schedule is. I'm a snacker. I know my kids are snackers. This sounds fantastic. I'm signing up right now.
My problem is waiting until the last minute when I'm hungry. And I'm like, yeah, I'll just go to Del Taco.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to have some Pringles, some string cheese, some pretzels, and some grapes.
Yeah,
right?
Factor is going to be fantastic. Absolutely.
Listen, you can skip the overpriced takeout and choose a cheaper and way more delicious option with Factor. Meals ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, which means more time for you and more time with your family. Head to factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50 and then use our promo code LockedOnMLB50 and you'll get 50% off your first order. That's LockedOnMLB50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnMLB50. Get 50% off. Factor Meals, get your delicious, chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered right to your door today.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Hey, everydayers, you know that you're going to want to tune into Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel on YouTube. Just head on over to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel, where they're covering all the top stories of the day in the sports world. Probably going to be talking about our 49ers headed back to the Super Bowl. Let's go. So we're excited about that. But again, head on over there on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today, and subscribe to the first ever 24/7 national sports streaming channel.
Johnny, I love our Locked On Everydayers and the diversity of the audience that watches and listens. There are those who are optimistic and they are very hopeful and drinking the hopium. And then there are those who are going to really enjoy this segment, because this segment is not about hope or being optimistic at all. And so that is something that I think a lot of people, they want to swim in that pond for maybe an extended amount of time, which I find really interesting.
Well, you and I tend to be positive people. And
Right.
I think we've done a good job this year of like trying to assess everything and both sides. But the best thing is, even if somebody's pessimistic, like, at least come at us with a good point, because
Sure.
when you have a good counterpoint or you make a good point about something that's like helpful in terms of, well, I'd be concerned about Reed Detmers if he was doing this, whatever you have to say, like, that gets me thinking, and I go, oh, you know what? That's a good point. But like, if you're just coming on and saying, well, Artie's got to sell the team. Like, yes, we know that. We also would like Artie Moreno to sell the team. This team's going to suck until Artie. Well, no, we don't necessarily know that. But if there's a coaching problem or if there's a player problem, come at us with that, because that actually gets the wheel. Like, I will always be the first to admit that I'm wrong about something. Like, I will always be like, you know what? That's actually pretty spot on. So if you come at us with that, that's so helpful, and it just adds to the dialogue, in my opinion.
That's what I think this segment is going to be helpful for. This is going to be a beneficial segment to identify some of the issues. So Mark, Locked On Every Day, or Mark Bogner, thinks the Halos are closer to being good than people give them credit. He gave us some reasons to be optimistic. We shared last segment about that. But there are some reasons to be pessimistic, John. And I think that the number one reason to be pessimistic about this team are the starters. Anderson, Sandoval, Detmers, Canning, Silseth. And the tension that we have to wrestle through is, do we believe that this starting five can put up the necessary numbers to win? This is the starting five, Johnny, that not all of them, but some of them that were 9th in the American League in ERA in 2022. And that rotation had Sandy and Detmers in it. But it's also a starting rotation that doesn't have Ohtani anymore. And Lorenzen was a part of that. And of course, Mark thinks that Lorenzen would be a great signing. But John, I think the truth is, and the tension that we're having to wrestle with here, is these starters are going to have to do what they haven't yet done in their careers for the Angels to be competitive this year. They're going to have to put in the innings. They're going to have to go further than 5 innings. They're going to have to throw strike one, right? They're going to have to know how to end the batter when they're up 0-2 and not all of a sudden find themselves at 3-2, right? And so that, I think, is a really big concern for Angel fans and for us on this show. Are these starters going to be what they potentially could be? And are they going to have to play out of their minds to get there, John?
Yeah. To me, Mike, it's a matter of, you need to figure out what you have. And in order to do that, you're going to have to see, like, Detmers, can you go more than 5 innings?
Right.
Sandy, can you go more than 5 innings? And they've certainly done that in the past, right? Like Detmers had a no-hitter. Sandy almost had a no-hitter against Minnesota. Like, so those sorts of things have happened in the past. But the problem is you're right. You're expecting kind of everything to go right with these guys. On the other hand, 2024, if 2024 is the Band-Aid year where we're just ripping things off and saying, screw it, let's go for it, and
Yeah.
let's see what these guys can do. Like, this is the year to do it. And you mentioned it
Right.
earlier without the pressure to win and get to the playoffs because you've got Trout and Ohtani on your team. I mean, look, I think Trout is in a sucky situation. I'm glad that he's staying. And I think if the Angels do have success this season, he's got to be a big part of that. But this is also kind of another year where you're seeing what people can do and seeing guys who can figure it out. Like, if you never give Jared Weaver a chance to pitch because you're afraid of what might happen, then you're never going to get Jared Weaver. And I think the same thing happens here with, like, I don't know, Detmers. If you never give him a chance to pitch in a 5-man rotation and ask him to get to 180 innings, then you're never going to find out. And
Right.
to me, 2024 is a find out year. And I understand that can be upsetting to some people because they want to be competitive every year. And I think this team will be competitive. Like, they will have an interesting season. They're not a 100-loss team. There
Right.
certainly been worse Angel teams in history that never hit 100 losses. And I don't think that this is the 100-loss team either.
Right.
So yes, you're right. You're asking a lot for these guys to step up, but if there's ever a year to do it, then do it in 2024 and just, like, get it over with. And there's no expectations on this season.
Yeah, I think the next 2 points go hand in hand, John, because these are points that cause some nerves and why we might be pessimistic. And that is the hitters along with injuries. Now, Ohtani's gone. We know that. And the positives are we're going to get a full season potentially of Ohapi and Neto and Shawnuel, and hopefully of Mike Trout and maybe potentially Anthony Rendon. So that's the positive. But the problem is, John, is the injuries. And that's the thing that always gets in the way. Rendon hasn't played more than 58 games in a season since he arrived. John, he played 52 of 60 during the COVID year. And then every year after that, he hasn't done well. And then Mike Trout has only crossed the 100-game mark only once in the last 4 years, and that was 2022 with 119 games. And by the way, FanGraphs projects that Rendon will play 133 games. And FanGraphs also projects that Trout will play 146 games. Go ahead, finish your thought.
I like projections. I think that they're helpful, but they're never set in stone. But I don't know how you predict a guy playing that many games. Like, I don't maybe you can predict their batting average, you can predict their home run rate, but to predict how many games they're going to be in, I don't understand how that works. But to your point, Mike, and to Mark's point, the original comment, the Angels have to do everything they can to invest in maintaining the health of this team.
Agreed.
Problem is, guys are going to get injured. Guys are going to have freak injuries. Zach Neto might have more back problems. Hopefully not, if they have a new physical therapist and training staff on helping out with this. And we know that they made several hires to replace the guys from last year, but is it a lateral move? Is it a better move? That's TBD. Like, you can keep replacing the training staff, but if you are paying the same amount of money as you did before because you're not getting quality training staff people, then that's a problem. The other thing I'll say is, I know that the DH spot is open for Trout and Rendon. The issue is that both of their injuries last season were in the batter's box. Rendon hitting the foul ball off the shin, and Trout's hamate bone breaking. But the other thing is the prior 2 years, Rendon had a wrist injury and he had a hip injury, and that's all diving and making plays at third base. Trout had calf issues that happened on the base paths, but it was probably amplified by the fact that he's manning center field all the time. So I think that, yes, bone break issues, freak accidents, that kind of stuff's still going to happen, but you can at least take some preventative steps by getting those guys off their feet. And so their hips and their wrist and their back and their calves don't hurt all the time, or they're not trying to play through something. You have that option now with the DH open. So I know that this is a little bit pessimistic, but again, I just think if you're going to see if these starters can step up and do something, then this is the year to do it. And then you can be pleasantly surprised by, the success, like the Diamondbacks. Like, nobody had the Diamondbacks going to the World Series, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I'm not saying that's the Angels either, but at least take the time to figure it out. And I think that they have the opportunity to do that this season.
Well, happy Super Bowl season to all those who celebrate, especially those that are Niner fans and I guess Chief fans as well.
Woo!
And that is a great greeting from our friends at FanDuel. They're America's #1 sports book. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seats on the couch, not going to the game, sitting on the couch, grabbing some of your favorite football snacks and placing some bets. And FanDuel is here to help you with that. So many ways to end the season with a W, or maybe 2 W's, or maybe 3 W's. You can not only bet on who will win the Super Bowl, but you can also bet on other things as well, like which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, so many others. Check out FanDuel. They have all of the bets listed on their app. And if you're a new customer and you join today, you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. All you need to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports book of the NFL.
All right, Mike, getting into our last segment of the day. What's our approach? If you and I as fans are going to walk into 2024 and root for this team and cheer for this team, how are we viewing this season? So why don't you get us started? How do you view this season? What do you think needs to happen? How do you feel as a fan going into 2024?
Here's how I'm feeling, John. If the young guys are going to play and the Halos are going to give them a shot to develop, then my perspective is going to be adjusted. And what I mean by that is I won't be so disappointed if we're not super competitive, if we're not in the race, all of those things. I'll be pleasantly surprised. What I'll be watching for this year is improvements, adjustments, and growth. I'm going to be anticipating the Angels removing those players that are not improving, adjusting, and growing. I want these players to move from potential to performance, and I want them to find out who they are. So even if we're a team that is behind in the race and we're not in the wild card race or anything along those lines, I'm going to be watching to see if they improve, adjust, and grow. And I want to see players in this starting rotation, in the bullpen, and in this lineup that are focused on those three things. Specifically, John, I'm going to be watching what happens with Ohapi, the development of Neto, and the development of Shonowell. I think that those three guys could be the Anderson, Edmonds, and Salmon of this team in 2024. I think that they have the opportunity to carry this team and to be leaders in the future as well. And so improvements, adjustment, and growth is my philosophy moving into 2024. What about you?
Well, since my GM episode, I have frequently said, roll the dice in the short term and make investments in the long term. And what I mean by roll the dice is give the question marks a chance. We talked about the starting staff. We talked about guys like Joe Adell, Luis Rengifo. You and I have contended that if he gets everyday starts, he'll be a major player. Mickey Moniak, I think, still has some questions to answer. Nolan Shonowell got on base for 29 straight games, but what's his full season going to look like? And can these guys stay healthy? So give the question marks a chance, give the youth a chance, and then don't block anybody, Mike, who needs a chance. And if you can, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, if you can prevent it. Now, if the Angels went out and got a frontline starter or somebody who would be the frontline starter in this rotation, and that means Silseth gets to go to AA or AAA and work on it. Like, that to me is acceptable. But when I say don't block anybody who needs a chance, like, don't go out and get Joey Votto to take at-bats away from Nolan Shonowell. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what about Cody Bellinger? Is he blocking somebody, do you think?
In my opinion, Cody Bellinger can only happen if they plan on trading somebody. And there was trade interest for both Mickey Moniak and Taylor Ward. Now, me as a selfish Angel fan, I'd want to keep Moniak around, but I think that you can actually get something for Ward. And our reasoning has been, we don't know how Ward's going to perform coming back from the face fracture. So maybe the Angels trade him without having to find out how he's going to come back from the face fracture. Like, if there's genuine interest, which there was reportedly a few weeks ago, then perhaps you make a move there. So if they do bring in somebody like a Bellinger, and I'll talk about that in a second too. But again, if you're pleasantly surprised with what happens this year, you can build off of that. Rolling the dice means letting the young guys figure it out. It means letting Trout and Rendon, DH more. It means helping your bullpen by adding to it the way that they've done, because again, you've got Matt Moore and Luis Garcia, short-term deals, right? And then you can go, yeah, we'll roll the dice on some bullpen arms and see if that makes a difference in 2024. So that's what I mean by roll the dice in the short term, but investing in the long term. Well, you brought up Cody Bellinger. Like, the Angels really haven't invested in the long term in terms of free agency, other than Stevenson, who's going to be here the next 3 years. And the young guys obviously still have years ahead of them. They have years of control. So that might be invest in the future by finding out what you have now. But they haven't signed anybody like Bellinger to like a 7-year deal where it's like, okay, he's going to be part of this thing for the next 7 years. Let's figure out what we have with him and the young guys and figure out if we can build something from it. They haven't done that yet. And that's why I originally pitched Aaron Nola in my GM episode, was get a frontline starter that you can count on for the next 5 to 7 years and make that part of your plans. And that's fine. Maybe investment means, having the freedom to let somebody like Bachman or Joyce start in the minors and develop there. And maybe it's finally finding out if you can count on Joe Adell for the next few years. So even though there hasn't been a monetary long-term investment other than like Stevenson, maybe the investment is figuring out what you have for the long term. So to me, investing in the long term means that you don't have to win now, but you can kind of figure out, hey, maybe we can make that third wild card spot. But the Angels just cannot compromise what they're building. And so if they're in a position where they're like, maybe we can make that wild card, and then they think that they need to trade Neto or Shonawell or something, I just don't compromise that. Don't let that be an issue. So to me, short expectations coming into this year. Long term, you should be thinking about the future. You should be thinking about 5, 6, 7 years from now and getting answers to who's going to be there then based on how they play now in 2024.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. And everydayers, remember that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So go to Locked On Sports today on YouTube right now and subscribe to that first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
Hey, give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, get in the comments and leave a comment for us. It's the best way to get in touch with us. Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's episode?
We're going to talk about the lineup and who's on the bench in 2024. And then the following week, we're going to work through each of the positions leading up to spring training. But specifically on Wednesday, who's starting and who's on the bench and who's in AAA? Who's in this starting five? And how does the bullpen align itself? We're going to talk about all of those things on Wednesday on Locked On Angels.
All right. We hope you'll come back and join us for that conversation. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Locked On Angels on Wednesday.
Man, I hope the Angels are good this year, because having a good football team is so much fun to watch. And I want that for our everydayers. I want them to watch a good baseball team.